Let's get posted. Yes. You know how this goes, everybody. If you don't, welcome to the show for the first time. But I am your host, Steve. Here again with a very special edition of the post game podcast, a fight week edition. And I thought the perfect guest to come on for fight week, especially when there's boxing on Friday night, would be man who has seen it all in the ring, in the corner, you name it. He knows the sweet science. It's actually a weekend of combat of all sorts of it because we had Friday night. Quick little backstory. There was an episode we were trying to do. Some things came up totally on my end and ended up recording this thing today, but we had an episode planned before the Mike Tyson and Jake Paul fight.
I know if we would have got me on there, I would have saved people a whole lot of heartache.
I know, right? That was, and shame of it is the fights before it, the two fights, Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano, and then the I'm blanking on his name.
And Barrios.
Yeah, Barrios. That fight was, oh man, there was just pure violence in that. And then Katie Taylor, I mean, I got to give it to Serrano. She overcame a lot of headbutts in that and got her game plan established as she went along. It was a hell of a rematch. And, being an Irishman myself, I'm happy for Katie Taylor, but I could have seen that decision swing in her way. It was a crazy card up until the dud of a main event, unfortunately. But I mean, most people did not expect Mike Tyson of 1986 to be in there. So that kicked off the weekend. And then last night, man, I'm glad I caught I didn't catch the full card, but to see Charles Oliveira just dismantle Michael Chandler like that. And then you see Jon Jones.
I'm completely ignorant to any of that. I don't even know any of those guys.
Yeah, the UFC, man, their cards just, they'll put some fighters on there that you've not even heard of. But some people, even with the big names, they're like, "What are you talking about?" They're scratching their head. But it was a great night for Jon Jones, who was the main event star next to Stipe Miocic. It was just a flawless game plan, execution, everything from Jon Jones. But the weekend started off with, some interesting fights on that undercard. I caught some of them, and
I watched the entirety of the card, even on the YouTube portion. I think I don't know how much boxing that you watch. I know you come to my events, so you have probably more knowledge than a typical casual fan. But one thing I feel like where boxing always drops the ball comparatively to the UFC. The UFC is a very dominant league, so they're not like trying to sell you a narrative of something that's not happening because they have all the fighters. All the fighters are their fighters. So the first thing I want to talk about is Taylor Serrano. I thought Taylor won the fight pretty handily. I thought she was going to either win by a point or 2 points. The vast majority of boxing people that I know believe that also. Now, there's a few boxing people that think Taylor might have lost by a point. Now, remember, boxing is an art and art is subjective. But I would say the vast majority of boxing people felt like Katie Taylor deserved to win that fight. So I'm describing all this to you because of where I think boxing does a bad job, especially. That was the most watched fight probably in United States history, I believe. It's not the most watched fight in history. They're going to try to sell you that narrative. It's not true. About 1 billion people watch Muhammad Ali fight Joe Frazier in the Philippines. So we're not touching on those kind of numbers. Muhammad Ali used to get 1 out of every 6 people on planet Earth to watch him fight. So we can just shut all that bullshit down now. But, in the UFC, they explain to you what you're watching, why you're watching it. But that's not what the box commentators did the other night. Amanda Serrano is signed to MVP Promotions. which Jake Paul's promotion is his fighter, and Eddie Hearn has Katie Taylor with Matchroom. So there was a round in the fight. I can't recall. It may have been round 3 or 4, and I thought it was a very dominant round by Katie Taylor. And the way the commentary was talking was Serrano was really just walking a dog on her, which wasn't true. Then they showed a replay of right afterwards, the production crew of Serrano hitting Taylor to make you feel like she won the round. Then they brought up the CompuBox stats. First off, CompuBox does not matter at all. It doesn't matter if somebody landed 5 punches and the other one landed 20. It's all. I'll explain the scoring criteria in a minute. But that's just something they use to manipulate people that do not understand scoring criteria to buy into their narrative. So I even said online, I knew before that decision was read, there was going to be a lot of people crying robbery. And the unfortunate part is that was a show-stealing type of bout. And that's the kind of fight that will bring casuals into the sport of boxing. Like, if you see a fight like that, you always want to see it again. You want to live up to that. But the problem is now people are going to have the bad taste of thinking Katie Taylor got wronged when she did not, because they sold a damn lie the whole fight.
Sure.
And see, that's all they're saying is they remember the fight because it was the wrong person won, which is complete bullshit. The scoring criteria for boxing, it's on a round by round basis. They fought 10 rounds every round. The winner of the round gets 10 points unless they get a point deducted and they won the round. They get 10 points. Loser of the round gets 9 points unless they get a point deducted, or if they're knocked down. If they're knocked down, they only get 8 points. If they're knocked down twice, they get 7 points. So obviously Taylor had a point deducted in a round that I thought she lost, if I'm not incorrect in remembering how I scored the fight. Boxing's also, each round is scored on this criteria: clean, effective punching, effective aggression. That doesn't mean just being aggressive all the time. It means when you are aggressive, you're effective. Defense and ring generalship. Ring generalship is like when the fight's being fought, when the exchanges are happening. I felt like, to me, Katie Taylor was the ring general. Her aggression wasn't always as effective, but when she was aggressive, it was effective. Amanda was always aggressive. So that was a kind of a toss-up. I feel like Katie Taylor, outside of that first round, and that's the other thing with the casual boxing fan. Katie Taylor got stung in that first round. That stuck in their head. They just thought that was all that was happening. And then they sell this narrative that she's dirty because she's leading with her head. First off, to southpaw and an orthodox, their heads are going to come together a lot. It's weird, man. She was an Olympian. She's fought like that her whole career. I've never heard that before. Exact same style as the first fight. They had an accidental clash of heads. So just because Serrano destroys her in the first round and Katie Taylor barely wins the next 2 rounds, Katie Taylor still winning the fight at that point. But that's, the commentators dropped the ball educating the fans on that one. Like I said, though, I understand you feel like if Serrano won by a point. That's understandable. But her losing the fight that close, that is not a robbery.
Yeah, and I'm glad that I don't feel alone with because I know one of the guys that was commentating is a man that you have shared the ring with, Roy Jones Jr., and he was the only one who I felt like at times was just even seeing what I was seeing in there, because these people are the money talks. That's the thing that I've noticed with a lot of these cards is that these
Roy's an independent contractor in that deal. Marinallo came over from Showtime, and he's primarily a PBC commentator. I'm not sure the dynamics there with Morrow. Maybe he's going to be coming over to MVP full time. He certainly was acting like he was an MVP roster employee. And, Rosie is a huge boxing fan. I love Rosie. So, I'm not going to say nothing bad about her. I hated everybody trashing her afterwards. I'm a fan of her as an actress. So is my wife. And Rosie, I know her being she's a hardcore boxing fan. Every time there's a fight in Madison Square Garden, she's there. It really made me happy hearing her commentate. But, she's Puerto Rican, so is Amanda Serrano. So, I think there was a slight bias there. I think she even admitted that on Twitter or Instagram shortly after.
Yeah, she was catching it online. I know that. And it was, mean, it was not as bad as one stream I was watching. Amber Rose got on there, and I mean, she was saying that she thought, well, I think the guy in the pink shorts won just because he wore pink shorts, something like that. It's not true. I mean, Rosie, I know is I've heard her name mentioned alongside boxing before, so but it was just it was a strange call they were doing for that fight. But Katie Taylor, even before that fight, she deserves the praise because she's really done it all. And I'm just, I don't know where, if you're Amanda Serrano, I mean, what do you think you do next if you're her? Because linked with Jake Paul, she can get money fights if she wants to, but she's a competitor.
I think there's fights out there. I'm not sure what weight Alicia Baumgardner's campaigning at right now. I feel like Alicia and her would be a large fight. I think Clarissa Shields has been talking about moving down potentially. I'm not sure. I mean, those fights are all. I mean, that's the kind of realm of what she's looking for, I would assume. And I think that being aligned with Jake Paul, she's the fight, right? I mean, now Katie's still the money fight too because of what she means, and you can come to Ireland, like you go to Cork, Ireland, and fight her. I mean, that's going to be huge for you too. I mean, they're both huge draws in the sport of boxing. But like the nasty stuff that was said to Rosie Perez, I noticed this. There's a boxing promoter that I work with, and he has a lot of casuals that come to his events. See, like the people that come to my fights are all the hardcore fans, and even if they weren't a hardcore fan, they've been with me for 20 years, so they become a hardcore fan. They have a real appreciation for the athletes. Go to this one guy's show, and this guy is getting hurt badly, and thank God the ref stopped it. It didn't make him get knocked out. And I talked to my wife afterwards. It's really weird that the typical spectator, they don't care about the combatant as a human, as a person. They're strictly for their entertainment. And it's really disappointing to see the reactions towards Mike Tyson. First off, they're questioning his integrity, saying it's scripted. That's disgusting to me. Secondly, they're talking about his training videos and then what he performed like. All right, first off, your reaction time and your reflexes don't have to be there when you're hitting something that doesn't move. But the most important thing that I outlined going into this fight, I gave the example of if we fell off of a step and we're 3 years old. If you see a 3-year-old fall off a step, it's not that scary. A 10-year-old fall off a step, it's not that scary. A 25-year-old fall off a step, it's not that scary. Now, I'm about to turn 38. If I fell off, you might be a little worried. I'd be a little sore. I'm good. Then all of a sudden you get a 60-year-old man falling off the step, it's going to scare the hell out of you. So we just had a man that was almost that age getting punched in the head. What I'm describing to you is your resilience to injury. Mike had none. Jake realized that the only thing that was fixed about it is Jake could have knocked Mike Tyson out anytime he wanted to, rounds 2 through 8. And thank God he had the mercy and the decency not to do so. You could tell as soon as he touched Mike Tyson how badly his legs reacted. It's exactly what I felt like was going to happen. He had no punch resiliency. It was sad. I'm glad Mike got $20 million, but people saying it's rigged and the script and all that, it's just, they're so disrespectful. And I also say this, any of them saying that, first off, Jake Paul would kill them. Second off, Mike Tyson would still kill him too.
Yeah, it's I had mixed feelings about seeing Mike in there because the hardcore fan that I feel like I am, it's cool, but it's also like, my dad is 4 years older than him, and it's like seeing his legs trying to hold up in there if he was training every day, so you feel for that. But the question is integrity, man. That's the part that hurts because Mike's never a guy that you're going to do that with if you know anything about the game. And this is coming from a fan's perspective. I don't hop in the ring there, but that's a good way to describe it because actually my buddy Zach, who I mentioned to you, was on one of the cards with your fighter Austin recently. that happened, he took over his dad's business because his dad was 60 and had an accident on a ladder. And, if it happens to me, I'm 32, or if it happens to Zach, we're going to shake it off probably pretty fast. But I mean, Mike just, and that's what I was feeling by, like probably, around round 3, round 4, something like that, was that, man, Jake could put him away. And, it was also just like, I want to see Jake against Tommy Fury, because I just before I jumped on here read that Tommy Fury is going to be fighting Darren Till, who's an MMA fighter. I mean,
well, see, the whole thing is this. Everybody keeps saying Jake Paul's not a real boxer. He's not a real boxer. Well, Tommy Fury ain't a real boxer either. He came from a damn reality show. Tommy's not his brother, Tyson Fury. All right. Jake said he got sick twice in the camp leading into that fight with Tommy Fury. I actually thought Jake did enough to win that fight. Tommy Fury is ass. He cannot fight. He cannot. Now, Jake looked really bad in that fight, and I thought, like I said, I thought Jake won, but it's not a robbery. It was a close razor thin fight. I think we're going to see Jake. And first off, I think, what is he, 10-1 or 11-1? People say he's not fighting anybody. He's not fighting anybody. If you look at a typical boxer's path, he has fought stellar opposition to this point. Tyron Woodley, not a boxer, but a beast. No boxer in their first 5 or 6 fights would fight that guy. They wouldn't. And he did, and he knocked him the hell out once. Anderson Silva. Oh, but he's not a boxer and he's old. Well, the year before he fought him, he beat Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., who used to be the WBC middleweight champion of the world. In a boxing match, Anderson Silva did. So I feel like that makes him legitimate. We had like this little bare-knuckle hybrid thing I fought on. Michael Seals was a super middleweight, light heavyweight top contender. He was in a fight of the year contender with Edwin Rodriguez on, I believe it was Spike not many years ago. A guy that have been floated for me to fight several times. I didn't really want to fight Michael Seals, giant puncher. Michael Seals fought Mike Perry on that show. Razor thin fight. I thought Seals edged him out, but Perry was declared the winner. Perry made himself a legitimate boxer by beating him, in my opinion. And man, Jake Paul dog walked him. So, right. And then he fought 2 boxers. I can't remember their names. They were like maybe Ryan Borland and like Andre August. They were like 13-3 or 17-1, something like that. They hadn't been in with deep opposition or anything. I think Jake knocked them both out in the first round. I mean, I don't understand the hate, but it's most boxing people, the vast majority of boxing people, especially those that are established that have done something, I think they're fans of Jake Paul. I always notice the guys that are in boxing and haven't accomplished much, they hate him, and the casuals they certainly hate him. I think that Jake Paul has a couple of moves next. The least likely one, but the one that I would like to see him do is Conor McGregor. I think Conor won't fight him because I think that Dana's not going to allow him to. And he'll really fight him. And a lot of people don't understand that Floyd carried him because they don't know what the hell they're watching. Floyd sparred him, basically, and just wore him out and played with him. I think Jake Paul knocks Conor McGregor out in 30 seconds to a minute. I think you can see him fight Chavez Jr. for some type of a fringe world title for the 200-pound cruiserweight title, which I think that's probably his most likely move next. Now, if Chavez gets right, I don't think Jake will get past him. But ever since he lost that middleweight title, he's been kind of messing around, drugs, alcohol. I mean, I don't know exactly what's going on, but I heard there's some bad things going on in his personal life. Then, of course, he could get Canelo next, which that'll be the end of the Jake Paul story as a fighter once he gets to Canelo. But I think that's what he's just trying to do, is prove that he can get to the ring with him. But if you guys are hoping to see Jake Paul get knocked out, make sure you watch that fight, because Canelo it's going to be bad. There's nothing Jake can do, even at 200 pounds, against Canelo Alvarez. Canelo's unlikely, I would think, and Conor's unlikely too. I think the most likely move will be Chavez. Another scenario could be he goes back to the more traditional route like he was and fights a few journeymen again. I've retired a million damn times, but And my name had been floated from somebody near the Paul team, not the Paul team themselves, but near the Paul team in the past. And I was like, I don't want to entertain it, blah, blah. And I think back then I would have probably been too much for him. I think at this point, I think it's a really tough fight for both of us. But I have decided, I think that I have enough respect for Jake. It does suck if I lose. Everybody's going to say I threw the damn fight. But, it'll pay more than my Pavlik fight, my Korobov fight, my Roy Jones fight. It'll pay me more than all those combined. I think if Jake does decide to go back that route, I hope that he would be decent enough to share some of that wealth with me. And you got all these boxers constantly calling him out. They don't got a chance in hell of fighting him. I got a good resume. I think I fit the bill of what he's like. He's not going to fight some 20-0 prospect that's going to kill him. But I'm near the end. I'm worn down, but I'm legit. I've held titles at 68 and 200, not world titles, but United States titles. I've been rated top 10 in both weight divisions. I mean, I think theoretically it could make sense. I've been talking on Facebook a little bit, trying to massage my way in with the president of MVP. Maybe if I would, man, it would be like winning the lottery getting a fight.
Man, I'm definitely rooting for you than that, because I mean it does. If you're Jake, I think it makes sense for the story, but only for the story, to do something like Fury. He's levels above KSI. Chavez was one that when it ended immediately, I started thinking about his name, going, yeah, that, maybe that could happen next.
Yeah, I think that's very likely. I mean, other routes, like people were like, oh, maybe Andre Ward, because Andre Ward's trying to throw his head in. First off, he is not going to fuck with Andre Ward. He's not going to do it. I don't care if he's been retired 7 years or not, and he's 40. The other one that I think, because Carl Froch hates Jake Paul. And there's something there on the internet. It's not a lot of hype, but it's something there. Carl Froch is a huge draw in England. I'm not sure how old Carl is. He's probably 45 or 46. That's a really tough fight for Jake. I think Carl wins the fight even at 46 or however old he is. I wouldn't count Jake all the way out just because of his youth and his size. But I think there's enough money there, bringing that UK audience in, because the Tommy Fury fan base already hates him. And Carl used to sell out Wembley by himself. So imagine what he would do in England with Jake Paul. I mean, these are the types of, people are like, hey, man, I want to fight Jake Paul. I want to fight Jake Paul. Well, first off, you're going to have to bring something big to the table like Carl Froch. Or, like I said, I would only have a shot at it because I don't deserve the fight. I don't get on the radar, only if he wants to go back that traditional route. And if he does, I'm open to it. But by no means, I'm smart enough to know I don't dictate shit to Jake Paul and all these other $400 fighters that keep calling him out. They don't have no damn chance in hell of getting that fight.
Yeah, I was very surprised when he 2 or 3 years ago he was gonna go against Hasim Rahman Jr.
Yep.
That was so interesting because I thought he was jumping up levels at that time, and then they started to float. What's his name?
Fight. You see, Hasim backed out of the fight. I mean, he can make every excuse he wants. He was scared. See, people talk all this shit in boxing. Right. So there's a guy that's trashing Austin Deanda right now because of his ESPN performance. He's like, oh, he's garbage. Look at it. 16-0, garbage. And look, I'll say it was a weaker performance for Austin, but it's on national TV, 16-0. 10 knockouts, 21 years old, been boxing 3.5 years.
Yeah.
This guy that's talking this trash, because I'm not going to say his name because I haven't decided if I'm going to really go after him yet or not and expose the lies of his career, because it's all like a lot of these guys, they actually are everything they're accusing Jake Paul of. That's the thing that's making me sick. So This guy had like 200 or 300 amateur fights that I'm describing as talking shit to Austin. He has over 20 fights, over 20 wins, 1 loss. He's rated in the top 10 in one sanctioned organization and in the top 20 in another one in his weight division. All right. So why are you trying to throw dirt on this young man? So I look at this guy's first 16 fights compared to Austin's. Mind you, this guy's a multiple-time national amateur champion as an amateur coming to the pros. So you would expect him to, well, Austin's opponents' win percentage through the first 16 are better than this guy's. So why you all right? So guess what? We're gonna have some breakdown videos coming up. I got this kid at my gym, works full time on TikTok. He's gonna edit something up. I'm gonna burn this dude's ass up.
Man, it's just people. And you had a post I saw on your page. This is before I reached out to you, where it was somebody who was talking trash to you. Maybe it is the same guy, but I can't even remember his name. And just saying how many times people do that to you. It's amazing the world we live in today. They talk online like it's like there's no repercussions. But if you have the experience, especially, it's cool that you're able to put him in his place. And yeah, I mean, Austin is another thing to definitely get into because my God, I mean, the way he got the hype for the hair thing, that's certainly an interesting way.
Got the ball with that, which I'll explain in a second. But where was it? Well, we'll go to the hair thing. So I forgot my train of thought prior. Yeah, so his Instagram, I looked at it, only went up 300 followers. I was like, man, what the hell is going on? It has like 100 million views, the haircut. So I go, he doesn't have his real name in his bio. His name wasn't searchable. So, but that's still on me. Like I should have thought of that, jumped on it quick. It's still my fault. It's not the kid's fault. But yeah, this shit happens. So he only gained like 400 Instagram followers when he could have gained like 60,000, which sucks. I could have got him some full-time endorsements off of that. He's just, I mean, he's humble. I want to say this in a nice way. I mean, it sounds derogatory and negative, but it's not. He's simple. Like he doesn't need a lot of complex luxuries and all this big stuff and all this hype. He's like, I'm going to have to produce all of his videos for him and stuff when it comes time for product placement. But I kind of like that. Like in today's world, it seems really off, but he cares about one thing: winning fights. Like he wasn't even the people that were hating on him and talking trash. I was way more upset than him. He said he's been dealing with that his whole life.
I love that. That's kind of the same with my buddy Zach, where it's just I could tell he's in the all he wants to do is just focus on the fighting, and that's something where it's going to be interesting to see how he markets himself if he gets onto that big card, or wherever he's trying to go to. Because
no, I've been assistant training Zak Draego recently. He comes down and trains with me once or twice a week. We've got a really good fighter-trainer connection. He's got a great attitude, good mental as far as learning. I think maybe in his MMA career he was done dirty by somebody that led his career potentially. I could tell he has some trust issues. And this is not something I haven't said to his face. He already knows that.
Yeah.
And I think he's self-limiting with his confidence in what he can do, right? Like if I tell Austin, man, you could jump in the water and kill this shark, he jumps in the water and tries to kill the shark, right? Like Zach doesn't believe how good he is. And it's starting to limit him a little bit, in my opinion. But I think he's changing some things outside the ring to get in a place to where we can take some risk. I think this coming year is going to be real interesting and a pivotal moment in Zak Draego's career. But I think if Zach makes the decision, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he was fighting on ESPN or a platform of that nature here in the next 2 years. I mean, that wouldn't surprise me at all. But he has to make the decision to do that.
Yeah, I could see it very, very easily because he's I mean, the belief, and I will say that honestly, I feel like with him, I kind of feel that a little bit where I sometimes it's like, in MMA, he's undefeated and he hasn't fought for a while at least. Like I don't, maybe he's been doing some grappling tournaments, things like that. But
I think folks are fully on boxing.
yeah, it's been at least full on boxing for a little while now, and I mean, he was just starching people in MMA, and I would think the same thing. I'm like, I hope Zach understands how talented he is, and going over to boxing, it didn't surprise me at all because I always thought when we were younger that he was gonna focus fully on boxing. So I just hope you all together, man, because it's a golden combination. And I grew up with him in Charlottesville. Actually, my first or not, my second dog is from Amherst, where Austin is from. So it's just cool to see all these fighters near where I grew up succeeding like this because they damn sure put the work in. And Zach, the cool thing about him, he'll draw a crowd too. I mean, I go to his, as much as I can. Now I'm living in Florida, but I've been to, I
That's the
think,
Zach, I feel like could draw a way larger crowd,
yes.
which in boxing, I mean, we've seen with Jake Paul allows you to dictate things other fighters can't.
Oh, yeah.
And I think Zach, in some ways, he's ashamed sometimes when he's fighting this guy that's 3-8, that's durable, right? But I mean, look how the fans are. Look what they're doing to Jake. He's fighting MMA legends in boxing. They're like, oh, he sucks. But the real thing is you're selling a story, right? Like Austin fought some guys that were like 1-10 in his first 6, right? People still came. You got to learn. The other thing is this: if he's fighting a guy, let's say a bad record, that's 3-15, but that guy's only been knocked out twice. And when you're first promoting that and you're building yourself up, you're selling the story. They're coming to see the story you're building up to because you got to get experience. So if the person, they're like, oh, well, who are you fighting? First off, who's the welterweight champion of the world? Well, that person doesn't fucking know. So it's not like you're going to say a name they're going to know. Well, what's his record? When I told Zach, they would whip your ass. I mean, that's it, right? That you can't beat them up, and I'm fighting them. Do you want to watch me fight them or not? Right? So, like, and you got to build up. Like I'm sure it would be awesome for the fans to hear he's fighting a 10-0 guy. But maybe Zach's not ready for that. I think physically and the skill set he probably is, but emotionally he's not. We're going to have to creep up through that. We got to get the crowds there. We're really much in a building phase for Zach right now. But look, boxing fans are very fickle. Like, look at the difference in boxing and MMA fans. I'm 38-15. Every time somebody tries to insult me, and mind you, I think 12 of my losses came to people that were involved in world title fights, if I'm not mistaken. If somebody tries to insult me, a boxing person, a casual boxing person, like, you got 15 losses, you suck. Could you imagine a guy that's 40-15 in UFC? He would be a fucking legend if he fought guys like that. See, like, the MMA community is so much more forgiving. You get a boxer, like, let's say Austin gets to 23-0 and loses a fight. Let's say he gets stopped in the fight. Oh, he needs to retire. He's finished. One loss. Come on, bro. Like, boxing fans are unforgiving.
I don't understand MMA fans sometimes because they just, I mean, like Jon Jones, he fought yesterday. The guy was probably after 1 a.m. when he fought. I can't even remember, but you know, that guy goes in there, has the performance he does, and people are saying, "Oh, he's got a shot at these younger guys beating them at his age now," but they're saying that he's a good guy outside of the cage. I don't know about that, but when it comes to just strictly the record with these people, how there's the differences in boxing,
Well, yeah,
and
MMA fans, they support their community. But, like, see, I think that's really bred through the commentary, right? Like Joe Rogan and those guys, Daniel Cormier, they do a great job.
yes,
Max Kellerman used to do that for boxing. Andre Ward, Roy Jones, they do great jobs. But then you got guys like, I like I like Tim Bradley as a person. But he's just sitting there shitting on people. Teddy Atlas was a great trainer, just sitting there shitting on people. The commentators got power, right? Let's explain it to you. So we're looking back at the ESPN fights we just had. Did you watch the fights?
Which ones?
When Austin fought.
No, I watched highlights of Austin. I didn't see that card.
So, like in the third or fourth round, they did a split screen because I was going, you know how I am, I'm crazy as hell. So they had me and the other trainer and the fight in the middle just so they could keep the video on me. So online, all the stuff was positive. Oh my gosh, I love watching the corners and their emotion. And, you know, I'm saying some rough shit to him. You're a bum, $500 fighter, and all this stuff to the other guy. There was no issues online at all. After the fight, right at the bell, it looked like maybe a 10th of a second after the bell, Pettis hit Austin. So I jumped out and said, don't hit him after the bell, bitch. And Tim Bradley was like, oh, man, he needs to be slapped. And then a few seconds goes by and he goes, man, that trainer's trying to make it more about himself than the fighter. Well, first off, I didn't put the camera on me for 6 rounds. ESPN did that. But now there's even calls from casual fans in Lynchburg for Austin to fire me because of Tim Bradley's words, you see. Because he said that. They have no idea what the hell's going on. They don't know the backstory. So, see, the commentators' words have power. And the UFC commentary is constantly pouring into the product. Like, they always are so respectful of both fighters going to the UFC fight. So when a guy wins, it means something. In a boxing match, oh, this guy, you know, he's working full-time in construction. I don't know how he's getting time to do his road work, just throwing off on a fighter. It's just horrible. I don't know, man. I mean, I just think the words have power. The commentary has, because they're the salesman for the product. And I think that's one spot where UFC is leaps and bounds ahead of boxing. Is the commentary is so biased in boxing. It's so negative. Like, instead of talking about Austin Deanda, like Tim Bradley said, that he didn't mind, which this doesn't bother me. He's a world champion. He beat Manny Pacquiao. He can say whatever the hell he wants. He said he didn't care to see Austin Deanda or DeAndre Pettis back on ESPN. That's what he said. There was no skill there. Well, if you take into account that Austin's been boxing for 3.5 years, he's 6-10-0, and he's beat 9 consecutive opponents at 21 years old with winning records, I'd say there's some skill there. But so, I mean, I think that what's next for Austin, like, you know, we talk about what's next for Jake Paul. What I really want, and it was floated to me, maybe in a joking way, maybe not, Nico Ali Walsh, the grandson of Muhammad Ali. They mentioned that name to me. I think the hate towards me from the online community, and then also the viral memory of Austin's haircut, that maybe catapults him into that. And also, you know, Austin had been performing really well, and he had a poorer performance, and I think that makes him look less dangerous to Nico Ali Walsh. Nico did comment on one of the SportsCenter posts on Austin and said it was worth the win. So I think maybe that means we're on his radar. It'd be incredible to have that fight for Austin, for Amherst, for Lynchburg, for me, for every fighter that's going to come after him. It'd be an honor to have that fight. I mean, that's my great hope, is he gets to fight Nico Ali Walsh next. If that fight doesn't come to fruition, I have a couple of other guys with winning records that I'm interested in making fights with. Maybe one of my past opponents, Jesse Nicolo, if he's ready to come back to the ring. And there's a few others. And if that doesn't happen, I wouldn't mind the rematch with Vitaly Gupkin that Austin just won a split decision in. The reason being, I don't know if you know about this, but his trainer had to be disarmed at the ring. He brought a handgun to the ring. He had to be disarmed. Oh. I thought Austin won 96-94. Going into the 10th round, the conversation between Austin and I said, do you think you're winning this fight? He said, yes. I said, do you believe you're winning this fight? He said, yes, I do. I said, well, I think it could be 5-4 either way. You need to step on the gas. He almost got him out of there in the last round. I jumped in the ring, and I told his coach, Ronnie, I was like, see, I told you we won the fight. He goes, that'll teach you. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? And he kind of got in my face, and then one of the staff the state was like, yeah, that guy brought a gun to the ring, and I cussed the shit out of him. But anyway, so Austin was declared the winner. 97-93 on one scorecard, 96-94 on one scorecard. The other scorecard, he lost 97-93. Like, again, it's close fight. They're screaming robbery. Gupkin won 9 rounds. The crowd was quiet because there was nothing to cheer about, even though in the last round they were chanting Austin, and Austin was about knocking the guy the hell out. But I would gladly now Ron, what is it? His name Ron Pisano, that's his name. Rowdy Ronnie on Instagram. This guy's a real fucking piece of shit. But I had bailed. Austin injured his thumb the first time we were going to fight Gupkin. And I helped finance about for Gupkin because I felt bad. I put my own money in to keep the guy active. He has no integrity. Took the kid, got a loss, and kind of degraded the quality of that win that I had helped finance for him. So then he was like, oh, I'm so surprised you took the fight. You were brave enough, blah, blah. Brings a handgun to the ring, talks shit. Then he tried to, my security, when they were disarming him, he's like, oh, I'm a law enforcement officer. And then, my security, they hit him with the quote, well, law enforcement officers kill the most unarmed civilians out of anybody. And then they disarmed him. But so then Ronnie got kind of upset after the fight because his promoter came and took the cut, all this. So Ronnie launched an investigation with the state to see if I paid off the judges. He's still talking shit online. But this guy, Ron Pisano, this guy's a piece of shit. But Ron, if you want the fight, you're not going to panhandle me anymore. I'm not paying for it. I will bet your yearly salary against you. We'll bet the fight, and we'll have the fight. We can even have the motherfucker in West Virginia or something. I'm just not coming to Maryland if you want to do the bet. Now, if you want me to pay you, I'll pay you half the purse. You can come back down here and fight him in Virginia, and I'll raise the funds. If not, shut the fuck up.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Ron Pisano, bro, he is a jerk. I mean, if you work with him in professional boxing, the man brought a handgun to the boxing ring. Think about that. Any promoter that's listening to this, James Hogan, Tony Jeter, I know you work with him. But Tony, I would highly suggest this guy not working at your events. Like, think about, even if he wasn't going to use it, let's say something happened at the event, which there's never happened in my event before. Nothing bad. I've had 30 plus events. I've never had nothing bad, but I've seen bad things happen at the event. Let's imagine some people storm the ring and disarm him. Now all of a sudden somebody crazy that's has some alcohol is holding a handgun. Whose fault is that? That's Ron Pisano's. Also, he entered through an entrance that was off limits because he tricked somebody, letting him in, saying he had already went to the pat down. Like, I mean, this is just a diabolical person, this guy, Ron Pisano.
And he sounds like somebody I wouldn't put it past him to have a Plexico Burris moment where it goes off in his pants. The gun is just
off or something.
I mean, God almighty, that is, and
listen, I got this for days. We don't got to get into all the reality series of boxing. The problem is, right, so much bullshit happens in boxing that people just let it slide. I'm the bad guy because I call everybody's bullshit all the time. I just get tired of it, man. It's just horrible. Like, there's so many horrible people in this damn sport, and this is the closest thing to a criminal organization that's possible to be legislated. I'm trying to think, I've been in it 20 years. I've been a trainer, fighter, promoter, manager, gym owner, matchmaker for big promotions. I used to help John Beninati match a lot of the PBC shows early on. I think maybe 15 to 16, I matched like a whole Mayweather card, most of the undercard. When Mayweather fought Berto, I matched a lot of that undercard. I even put myself on the fight when I fought Ronald Gavril. I mean, I've got some crazy stories about boxing, and there's a lot of crazy happenings that you just wouldn't believe. It sounds like some kind of fictional story, but one thing I'll tell you, I've been in every facet of sport for 20 years. I've never seen a fight fixed. I've never been approached to fix a fight. I've never known of a fight to be fixed. I think that's mostly bullshit. Plus, if people knew how disorganized boxing was, they would realize it's not possible to be fixed. Usually when you see a bad decision, it's the incompetence of the state. The states legislate the sport. And it also doesn't make sense. I don't know, the younger fans might not remember this, but at one point, Manny Pacquiao was the golden goose. He was the golden goose. He was the man. Tim Bradley fought him. And this is not an insult to Tim because I just brought up he was talking trash to me. It's not. And Tim called hell for this, even though it's not his fault. He didn't judge the fight. June 8th, 2012, I fought Kelly Pavlik on ESPN. I got destroyed. June 9th, the next day in Vegas, right up the road, Tim Bradley fought Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao is the golden goose. Now, Tim Bradley's a great fighter, but, he was average ticket seller, probably about as much as I sell. Manny Pacquiao selling out stadiums, generating millions of dollars of pay-per-view revenue. Manny Pacquiao probably won 8 or 9 of the 12 rounds. Manny Pacquiao lost the decision. Now, why in the hell would they fix a fight to make the golden goose lose? That doesn't make sense. It's incompetence by the state. People just don't know boxing.
It's
no, that's why concerned on.
Oh yeah, I've seen enough of them as a fan. Somebody who's gone to a couple of them, not been to. I've got to go to a bigger card finally and get that done because I also have a friend who's trying to get me to go to a PFL event next year. And
yeah, isn't Jake Paul the major shareholder in that?
Yeah, him and Francis Ngannou are the two that are, which I saw right after the fight on Friday night that Ngannou was tweeting about Jake Paul saying that they were going to be going against each other next because he wants to avenge Mike Tyson's loss. Kind of similar to how Tyson avenged Ali back in the day.
I'll tell you, Jake Paul can't beat Francis Ngannou in a boxing match. Ngannou had, although Fury slept on him and was severely deconditioned, to do what Ngannou did against that man was incredible. Like, you may never see that. You might not see that for 2 or 3 other years. I mean, I don't think people realize what he did. Now, once he lost the element of surprise, I knew after Anthony Joshua seen that, I knew Ngannou was fucked. And I mean, that's what happened. He got flatlined. But I mean, I'd say he could beat a lot of the top 30 heavyweights in the world in boxing. There's probably maybe like 10 of them he can't really mess with, but he would be competitive with the other 20.
Ngannou's making it interesting, man. I mean, it was, if Fury loses that fight against him, it's nuclear for his career because but at the same time, I think people are starting to realize now how special Francis is. And yeah, that I don't think you're going to see anything like that for a long time. I
think UFC's dropping the ball just because Dana White wants to control the narrative so much, which is fine because he's still one of the greatest combat sports promoters to ever live. Like, he's got to be in the top 3. Top 3, I always say, is Bob Arum, obviously with Top Rank. You got Vince McMahon, even though it's fake. Look what he did. He took a company that was $300,000 to, like, I don't know what he sold it for, $4 billion. That's incredible. And then look at what Dana White's done. Like, you have all these MMA fans. Nobody even knew what the hell that was when he got to UFC. Some people don't even know the sport's called MMA. They think the sport is called UFC. That's how incredible it is. I mean, he's done an incredible job. So, I mean, I'm not hating on him for that. But, I mean, I think Ngannou and Jon Jones should fight, right?
Yeah, I mean, God, he got in there against I forget his last name, but Renan is the guy's first name in PFL, annihilated him. And, now it's just, I don't know who would even come close to Ngannou right now, but Jon Jones. I mean, they're talking about super fights with Pereira and all that. It's interesting to see Dana White. I mean, that's one way that I think the UFC is sort of turning into boxing in some ways is because he used to say, oh, I'll never do super fights or gimmick fights, that kind of stuff. Floyd and Conor was what it was. There was a lot of money to be made, but he started to do stuff like, now they're building up Alex Pereira and Jon Jones fighting each other. It's like, well, aren't they, that would be a super fight. So, you're not into doing, is it just gimmick fights now, Dana? I mean, Dana will get emotional and he'll talk and in that moment not realize he's saying things that we can go back online.
So I think he kind of changed to a degree. Like, we always, in boxing, we used to always say if you ask any boxing coach back in the day, you'd be like, what athlete in any sport is the chasm no greater where how good that person actually is and how good people believe they are? So the casual person thinks they're this great, but they're really way down here. We always used to say Mike Tyson. Now, by no means, now he's one of the top 150 fighters that ever lived, and probably top 20 heavyweights just off winning the heavyweight title so early. But from what people thought he was to what he actually was so great. Like if him and Muhammad Ali had fought 10 times, Ali would have won 11. If him and George Foreman would have fought 10 times, Foreman would have won 100. I mean, now, Tyson was a great fighter. He accomplished a lot more than me. But I'm saying all that for this statement. I think that there's an athlete that has their prowess has become far more mythical than what they were actually capable of. And Dana White created that monster, and that's Conor McGregor. I think he's won one MMA fight, if I'm not mistaken, since Obama was in office. And he's Floyd Mayweather's son. So, I mean, why do we keep and look at the stuff that Conor McGregor said to Floyd Mayweather. I mean, in that press conference in Canada, all right, we already know about all the allegations about sexual misconduct. We've seen him hit the old man. We've seen him throw the chair in the window of the bus and injure somebody. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, besides all that, a lot of people haven't seen this. I don't know if you can find it on the internet. They asked Conor about a Rocky movie. It was the one where it's in Apollo's gym. He goes, oh, that's the one where all the monkeys are in the gym. They swept it under the rug. Right afterwards, he gets the mic to hype the fight. It's in Canada. I'm pretty sure I'm not mistaken. He says, play some music for me. And he looks at Floyd Mayweather and he says, dance for me, boy.
Yes.
How is this guy hyped up to be a hero? Okay. And then I called somebody a bitch in a fight that I'm not fighting in, and all of a sudden I'm a villain. This other guy's a horrible human, but a hero. He can't look. When's the last time he won a fight? He's won one fight in 10 years.
God,
look. His story is amazing. What he did is amazing. At one point, I'm sure he could fight, but what he actually was compared to what people think he is the chasm is incredible, isn't it?
It's so true, man. I mean, Donald Cerrone was the last time that he won a fight, and that guy, even at that time, Cowboy was not who he used to be. And
all right, so see, that's a perfect example too. We're talking about MMA fans. Cerrone's a guy that represents a guy kind of like I do in boxing. Just fight anybody, any notice, move up and down and wait to get the fight done. That's what he did, right?
Oh, yeah.
He was a hero. But look at me. I'm some kind of bum. Come on, man. Boxing fans are horrible.
God, man. They're the villains. That is just ruthlessness, the way that they treat some of these people. And it's, I remember so much about it. I watched Conor's rise pretty much from the start because I was living with Zach at the time when I first heard about him. And I mean, I remember him saying to Daniel Cormier in a press conference about Dustin Poirier, which was the first time they fought each other a decade ago. And he called Dustin a hillbilly in this interview with Daniel Cormier. And Daniel Cormier said, well, what would you call me if you saw me? And Conor just goes, you're a ghetto hillbilly. That kind of stuff is
Is Dustin from Kentucky?
He's from Louisiana.
I thought hillbillies only came from Kentucky, but
yeah,
maybe. And I also don't think that that's necessarily a derogatory term. Redneck is derogatory, but I don't think that hillbilly is. Yeah. Speaking of that, I do think Dana White is Turkey al-Sheikh, His Excellency, the guy that from Saudi Arabia. I think that he's going to help Dana White start a boxing promotion, if I'm not mistaken, or he's some kind of director of operations. Or I would be excited for that.
I can't. They're talking about a couple different things because I know they were saying that Israel Adesanya and Joe Rogan were talking about like a grappling league, that kind of thing. I mean, my God, can we have that or boxing over power slap? I'm so done with that. Yeah, another thing where it's like, I don't do gimmick fights. You do a gimmick league.
That looks dangerous, man. I don't think I can mess with that.
God, it's just such an interesting time to be alive. But if you're a fight fan, good Lord, I don't know what you're into, but you got plenty to choose from. And man, I'm so glad this week of all weeks, I was able to get you on here, man. And I'll tell you this much, we'll do it again. I'd love to have you and Austin both on here. If he's down, anytime, man. And wherever you guys.
You're going to have to work a lot harder to get him to talk, but I'm sure he'll come on. He's a man of very few words. Hey, you would probably do well with Zak on here. Have you ever had Zak?
Yeah, we did a live together last year, but I want to finally get him on one of these, where we sit down and it goes to YouTube. Because actually, Zak was the guy who was telling me about podcasting back in like 2017, 2016. And we did.
He's always trying to force me to do a podcast too.
That's it. Yeah, it's like I'm kind of shocked because there are some people that I've asked to do them before who are comics that I know who I thought, oh, they're for sure game, and then they're like, no, I don't really want to. Zak has always been up for it, and I finally am starting to get like an established platform to where with this sports show that is, because I only started it in December of 2022, so I figured, hey, let's see how long I do it for. Now I'm almost 2 years into it. So I'm like, I got to get Zak on. I mean, especially right now, strike while his name is rising, because it's only going to continue to rise. Just like I know Austin is going to, man. And you got a fan here.
Austin is going to ride it as far as his talent will take him, his work ethic. He still makes some small mistakes. I feel like he's gained a little too much weight, and he does some simple mistakes, like I said. But to think that Austin's not going to be in elite fights one day, that to me, that would be foolish, because he's willing to do whatever it takes, all the sacrifices. As far as Zak, I think Zak can do that too. But Zak just has to make that decision in his soul. And I don't know if he wants to put boxing at the top yet. And, I'm selfish, so I hope that he does.
God, me too, man. I fully endorse it. I mean, I've seen how hard he's worked. I've seen how long he's wanted to do it for. He's always had that toughness and that mental strength and the confidence since we were kids, man, and just channel it towards boxing. I mean, he's going out of the stratosphere. I know that much, man. And
once he stops fighting, he'll be a great coach too. He has a good mind.
Oh yeah, that's exactly. I've always figured that he would turn his attention to that as soon as he gets out of fighting. Because, hey, man, I mean, you've got that kind of, the friends that he has, the just the family he has, such good people around him, match his confidence. He could succeed at anything, but that I'm going to be as soon as I could get to his next fight, man. I can't wait. And Austin's too.
You got to fly your ass up for the next one. Hopefully we'll have it between March and June.
Yes, because I think I'm going to be in Virginia in that time. So I'm just planning to go then there because
just follow my Facebook or my Instagram. I don't post on Instagram quite as much, but we'll know. But obviously, if Austin gets that fight with Nico Ali Walsh, I'm going to have to put everything towards that short term because it could change everything for all the fighters on the roster.
Oh God, man, I am praying for it because he deserves it, and that would just be so much fun to watch as a purist, even as a casual. I'm rooting for it, brother, and whenever it is, I'm there. I will be jumping right on Facebook after I get off. Scott, thank you so damn much for being on the show, brother.
Yeah, I appreciate you. I'll talk to you again soon, Steven.
Absolutely, man. Enjoy your night.